The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So I admit I had to kind of laugh when I saw these numbers on what Terry McLaurin's no-show at mandatory minicamp is going to cost him. About $105,000. That's a lot of money to me, probably a lot of money to you. But when we're talking about a contract that could be somewhere between $30 and $33 million a year, it's laughable. It was in my lifetime, not really that long ago for me anyway, that $105,000 was a pretty decent salary for a starting wide receiver in the NFL. Now it's whatever it is. So, yeah, $105,000. And realistically, when they do work out the contract extension, the agent will say, oh, yeah, before we put pen to paper here, let's just do away with that fine of $105,000. It's bizarre. I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. I remember the 1982 strike. That was the one that knocked out half the season. That's the first year that the Redskins won the Super Bowl, the 82 season, but they only had 9 regular season games because the players went out on strike after week 2, and they didn't come back until close to Thanksgiving. But they managed to get in 9 regular season games, and then you had that tournament. So Washington had to win actually 4 games to win the Super Bowl, even though they had the best record in the league at 8-1. And during that strike, I was working in Dallas then, Gary Myers, who was with the Dallas Morning News, later went on to a long run with the New York Daily News. He got a hold of the salaries for the players. This is a period of time where we didn't know what these guys made. We were starting to hear about baseball. Oh, yeah, Nolan Ryan, $1 million a year. Pete Rose, wow, those $1 million a year. Can you imagine $1 million a year? But know much about football players. We knew about Joe Namath's salary in 1965 when he got $400,000, but that wasn't for 1 year. That was a multi-year deal. Might have even been 5 years. I don't know exactly, but that was just a big number, $400,000. And I saw Drew Pearson's salary. Drew Pearson, by that time, was on his way to the Hall of Fame. He'd been to the Pro Bowl a number of times. He'd been a part of a Super Bowl championship team. He was making about $75,000 a year. The kicker, forget the kicker's name, he was making about what I was making as a young radio guy. The money was so much different. So, yeah, McLaurin not showing up, no skin off his nose, $105,000 in fines. Not a good look for the team. Maybe not a perfectly good look for Terry McLaurin, but he's built up so much equity here, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. And the public face of this comes from Dan Quinn, the coach, who, of course, opened up his news conference yesterday with McLaurin a no-show, and the first question about that.
Hey, sometimes football and business, they intersect, and this is one of those times. Terry is a fantastic teammate and really puts in the work and spent a lot of time with him already this offseason. So, but the business side of things, Adam and their crew and Terry and his group, they'll let them work through that. But in the meantime, lots of stuff to do. And we try to customize as much as we can, Nikki, who can do what, who's in rehab, who can do some things, who can do everything, who needs to see more during this time of year, and who do we need to see less. And so this is one of those times you're really able to customize the script and the work to do that.
Now, there is some damage control going on there. I'm sure Dan Quinn off the record would tell you, yeah, we really would like to have Terry here. We won't have any real timing going on between Jaden Daniels and Terry until we get to training camp. That's assuming that he doesn't hold out. He does have a contract for 1 more year. So, I think he would absolutely prefer to have Terry McLaurin there, but he's telling you, well, we get to work with some other guys and this, that, and the other. You remember when in 2022, this is the last time we had a contract deal with McLaurin where, by the way, the numbers are just, staggering how they've gone up. He signed a 4-year deal for $70 million in 2022, just 3 years ago. DK Metcalf would probably be a comp here. He just signed a 4-year deal for $130 million. So it's another $60 million. Now, not all that guaranteed, per year, different, so forth and so on. But, to see that kind of a jump, and a lot of it has to do with television because when they're spinning off like 2 Christmas Day games for $100 million to Netflix and all the international stuff that they're doing, and it's going to go up even more once we get to 2029 when they can reopen the contract and probably double the media money. But that's where it's gone. And so, if you look at how things change, that's the way that those things change. A change is big for money. But back to 2022, Carson Wentz, that was the year that they brought him in with such high hopes. Okay, veteran quarterback, even though he'd flamed out in 2 other places after being dumped by Philadelphia. He was now with the Colts, and he'd already been in Jacksonville. Not Jacksonville. Maybe it was just the Colts. Okay, so maybe this was his 3rd team. Whatever it was, they thought that they could revive him here. And then in the early part of the season, there was nothing happening between Carson Wentz and Terry McLaurin. It was all blamed on, Terry didn't show up at minicamp, and he didn't get a lot of reps together, so they didn't really have their timing done. Turned out that Carson Wentz just stunk. He just stunk. It was terrible. So that's not going to be the case, obviously, with Jayden Daniels, and I'm sure that they will get this done. As far as what this means, coach-player relationship with McLaurin and no-show, again, says Quinn, not a big deal.
I can have the relationship as the coach and the ball player and the man. And so, just keep a cool head about it and, keep communication up, which, Terry and I certainly do. So I think the main thing, expect the expected. Sometimes the business and football can get contentious and difficult, but it never has to be with the people that are inside the locker room and doing that. And so I've learned that, through the years, and easy advice to follow.
Laramie and Marshawn are here this week.
Correct.
What are you expecting to see from them, especially with Marshawn coming off the hamstring stuff and all that?
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, a little bit customized, John, who will do what, how much we'll get. So, and it'll kind of depend on the day as well, what we want to feature and where we're at. But, they're both doing good and pumped they're here and getting rolling with us. So they're really I've enjoyed, spending time with them here. Like for Marshawn, when it's traded, it's in season, it's already intense. And so it's in a different atmosphere. You get to have some good conversations. And same with Laramie from the trade to get him here. I got a chance to meet, his family, when he arrived here. And so not every time you get to do that. So, I took that time to spend time with, his son and his family. Like, that was a good deal for me to get a chance to spend time with him. I got to know his why maybe before he even got here and got into the locker room.
Dan, this may be in line with your customization for the workout for these guys. Is Marshawn a full participant this week?
He'll get quite a bit, but I'll see where it goes after today, and do we need to see how much tomorrow? But, I would say full participant going into it. What does that mean for everybody? A little bit different, Ben, but, there's no restrictions going in.
And I left that part in about Marshawn Lattimore and Laramie Tunsil because they were also no-shows last week at the voluntary workouts, but they were there yesterday. One thing, though, that Quinn said about the relationship with Terry McLaurin, that he can set the business side aside, essentially, and deal with him as a coach and as a man, that was something that wasn't going to be possible with Ron Rivera, which was another reason that the whole thing flamed out with the coach-centric operation, because Ron Rivera, in addition to being the head coach, was the general manager. He had say over that. So what Quinn is telling you is the front office deals with all that business stuff. That's Adam Peters' job. His job is to manage the cap. His job is to work out contracts. I do the coaching here, which is exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's the way a team is supposed to run. You need division of labor. You need a strong business person to be the president of the team, which they apparently have now. We'll see how it plays out. But they now have a strong president who, Mark Klaus, who used to be the president of Campbell's Soup. He's run a big corporation before, so he could certainly run a corporation like this. You have a general manager in Adam Peters who's already proven he knows what he's doing and putting together a roster. And Dan Quinn, who had taken a team to a Super Bowl before and clearly showed that he knows how to run a team, as he did last year. As for what they hope to accomplish in these last couple of days of the minicamp before they break and take over a month off before training camp begins in late July, here's Quinn on that.
The communication on all 3 phases, because if we can get that part right, I know the contact and those things will take place, but you have to have the communication down at a really, really strong level. And so I want to hear it. I want to feel that all the way through in all three phases, knowing that's kind of giving you information as the teacher that the student knows it. Oftentimes, we've all been in classroom where there was good teaching that went on, but we don't know if there was good learning. You know, those lecture halls that we were like for a long time, and then, okay, I don't know, I wrote some things down, I might have missed a half hour there somewhere. Like, when the communication happens on the field, you get feedback as a coach. This is happening. He understands that there's a good communication. So that's what I like to listen for.
And you get a lot of that from what you heard from Kliff Kingsbury, in that we don't spend a lot of time just sitting in the classroom. We go over some things, and then we do it on the field. That seems to be a good philosophy for them. A couple of reacts from players. This was Brian Robinson, who has dealt with some injuries in the past. The first one his rookie year, clearly bizarre, where he got shot and somehow only missed 4 games, but he missed a couple along the way the last couple of years, and he's going into the last year of his rookie contract. So he's looking to play for a contract, and he knows you want to get paid, you better be on the field.
Biggest thing for me is just, being available, just being on the field. I think, when I'm healthy and I'm, well, I'm held when I'm well, for sure. And, the biggest thing for me is just being available, being out there on the field where I can continue to produce, and everything as far as the craft. I'm going to stay sharp, continue to work, put in the extra time, extra hours in the building, outside the building, whatever I need to do to just stay sharp.
That would make a really good T-shirt. I don't know if he coined that phrase, but I'm hell when I'm well. I would say that about myself, and I've only taken few sick days in the last 38 years because I got COVID for my granddaughter. I'd like to get that T-shirt. I'm hell when I'm well. Tress Way, he's been here longer than anybody else, going into his, I believe it's his 12th year with the team. He has seen it all. Oh, man, the stories that he could probably tell you off the record would curl your hair. And now he's looking at an organization which is finally on the right foot, and they managed to keep most of the coaching staff, which is something he hasn't seen year to year in his time here.
As a player, it's not a huge surprise, like Mr. Harris and the ownership group, AP and DQ, like how they treat everybody, how intentional everything is, the expectations and the competitiveness. I mean, if you're a competitive dude, it's no wonder why you would just want to stay here and come back here. So it's a huge breath of fresh air, and it also adds a little bit of that, wow, I'm going to go for a big word, familiarity to the whole thing.
I can't say that, but you can.
I went to Oklahoma. I took a long shot there. But it was, I think that's a sweet breath of fresh air, coming back. You want to come out and win as many games as possible, building off of last season, things like that. But when you have that, that's a huge plus.
Plus, this year, with the schedule coming out, Tress Way will be playing a lot of games at night, Monday night, Thursday night. Not necessarily all 1 o'clock games, which is what he's been used to most of the time here. And he says, in fact, we are ready for prime time.
I have never been around a coach who does it week to week better than how DQ does it. I mean, you literally forget about what happened the last week and move on to the next one. And so I'll put my coins with him that will be focused a week at a time. But it is, I'd much rather have a lot of this, a lot of the excitement or, the pressure, if you will, or expectations. Man, bring those on. It's a lot more fun to play that way when you got the whole city behind you.
And as you may have noticed, he didn't punt much last year. So, the wear and tear, although I don't know how much wear and tear there is punting the football, but that will also probably extend his career the way they play. It might be also double-sided, because at some point they may look at his salary and go, we only punt the ball a few times a game. We're going for it on 4th down so much. Do we really need to pay a punter what we're paying him? But he has been a damn good soldier here for a long time, and gave up his number 5, which seemed to work out pretty well for the guy who got it. Last comment from Javon Kinlaw. He's new. Now, he's been with San Francisco. He's been with a good organization, but spent last year with the Jets. And this was his take on what he's seen so far in this offseason as a Commander.
It's awesome, man. It's a great environment
to play the game of football in, starting with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, two great human beings. And you could tell they built this roster up a special way. It's a bunch of special, unique individuals around this team. And I just love being here. I love that they felt as if I could fit in with the culture. So that must mean I'm a good guy, you know.
Also, quasi-local guy. Spent part of his years growing up in D.C. and was actually, his family was homeless for a while. We've had a few guys from D.C. Make it in the NFL. There have been a handful of players who've done. I remember the Commanders had one, or the Redskins. Lonnie Perrin played with them briefly. He was a D.C. guy. There's a few who have been here. I think, well, Tom Brown grew up in Silver Spring, went to Blair. But the number of players coming out to play in the NFL out of Washington, D.C., and then going to play for this team, not too many. I guess there's some who've made it in the NFL. But he's one of those. I don't know if he went to high school around here, but actually does have some background here in Washington, D.C. All right, NBA Finals continue tonight. We use this term. It's a cliche, but going home after getting blown out in Game 2 in Oklahoma City, must win for Indiana. You can lose this game, go down 2-1, and still win the series. But the way they played in Game 2, that can't happen in Game 3. And this Brian Windhorst on PTI yesterday with what he sees in this series. And he said something very surprising about Tyrese Halliburton and his background, his history in games against Oklahoma City. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Before we get to the NBA Finals, which resume tonight in Indianapolis, a couple more football stories. Kirk Cousins talking to the media yesterday. He did show up at minicamp for Atlanta. It is mandatory, but he can certainly afford to pay the fines with the contract that he has. He's in the second year of a 4-year, $180 million deal. And as I mentioned with Terry McLaurin, it's going to cost him about $105,000 to skip this mandatory minicamp. So he can afford to do that. But he showed up knowing that he's going to be the backup, that they're going to go with Michael Penix Jr., who finished up the season for Atlanta. And he said, we're moving forward. It's about how we as a team and as a quarterback room can be the best we can in 2025. I think the Falcons are doing the right thing. They're not going to pay off most of the contract and trade him where he wants to go. And the jury is still out on Michael Penix. Michael Penix completed only 58% of his passes when he played last year. He threw as many interceptions as he did touchdowns, 3 of them. Looked pretty good in that season-closing game. It was last home game anyway for the Commanders, second to last game of the season, that Sunday night game against Washington. But, he still has to prove himself, and there could be some backsliding there, and they may want to put Kirk Cousins back in. Or I think the more important thing for the Falcons is to wait and see what happens with the rest of the league. Somebody may suffer an injury during training camp. Now, the injuries in preseason games don't really happen much anymore because these guys only play a series or two. But somebody could have a need at quarterback, and Kirk Cousins could fill that for a team that hopes to contend. He's not going to go to the Hall of Fame, but financially he's had a Hall of Fame career, and he's been pretty good. He's been pretty good. Not overwhelmingly great, not a superstar, but certainly a serviceable starting quarterback for some team. So he's due $27.5 million in guaranteed money. Well, the Falcons are just not going to eat that. They're saying, well, we're paying for it anyway. Let's use it as an insurance policy in case Michael Penix either doesn't play well or, God forbid, gets hurt. So I think that makes total sense, and he's being a good soldier right now, or at least appearing to be a good soldier. I'm sure he would like to be traded. I'm sure he doesn't want to spend the season sitting behind Michael Penix, but he doesn't really have a choice if they're not going to deal him. He's not going to sit out and lose the money. And the Falcons are not in a position where they feel like they have to trade him because there really isn't any real upside for that unless they find a team that's willing to take on the bulk of the salary and trade them something of value. If not, he's a backup. Just just the way it is. Steve Young was a backup in San Francisco for a number of years. I know the league was different then. We didn't have free agency, but he sat for, I think, 3 full years behind Joe Montana. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's one of the best ever. Sat for 3 years. And also Aaron Rodgers finally showed up for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He signed his $13.6 million contract, and he confirmed, because we saw the wedding ring on his hand when he was signing his contract. Yes, he did get married a couple of months ago, but then he said very much Aaron Rodgers things about signing with the Steelers. I don't need it for my ego. I don't need it to keep playing. A lot of decisions that I've made over my career in life, from strictly the ego, and even if they turn out well, are always unfulfilling. But the decisions made from the soul are pretty fulfilling. This was a decision that was best for my soul. Oh, yeah, that's not gonna play well if he doesn't play well. And he said, I felt like being here with Mike Tomlin and the guys, the opportunity here was the best for me. I'm excited to be here. And then he said this, and I would bet you that this was really the only legitimate offer that he had. He said, there were discussions with other organizations for sure. But again, the rapport that fell in between me and Mike made it to where I was going through my personal stuff. You know, he did talk about having a relative with cancer. He says, there wasn't any other option for me. It was to play here or not play. I think the last part of that is right. There were no other options. And there was speculation that the delay was partly due to the fact that he was hoping that the Minnesota Vikings were not going to say, well, we're going with J.J. McCarthy, that they were going to bring him in for a year where he'd have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Now, he says he's not just playing to win a Super Bowl. You know, he wants to win. He's been a fan of Mike Tomlin for a long time. There's something special, he said, about this area, being Pittsburgh. He is Mr. Rogers, and he's back in the real neighborhood of Mr. Rogers. The original Mr. Rogers is from Pittsburgh, was from Pittsburgh, and with Mayor McFeely and Lady Jane Chatterley and all the other characters that were there. It was a show done in Pittsburgh. But Tomlin said about the decision to bring in Aaron Rodgers and to wait for him to go through all this mishigas to finally show up in time for the minicamp. He says, I'll be really straightforward with you. June reps are a heck of a lot more important for a guy like Will Howard at this stage of his career than the guy who's been doing it for 20 years. So whatever snaps he gets, you take away from a guy like Will Howard. We're going to get this collective ready for training camp, the collective being the quarterback room, as they call it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, June reps are important, but also the timing with the receivers. Now, he has been throwing with DK Metcalf for whatever that's worth, but this season is not going to be about Will Howard at quarterback. This is going to be now about Aaron Rodgers, as it always is. You know, what's Aaron Rodgers thinking? What's Aaron Rodgers going to do? One thing he's doing, he's complaining about the helmet right away. He says the helmet that he wore for 20 years, that's no longer considered safe by the NFL. So they've given him a new helmet, which he hates. So that'll be a little excuse for a while. Yeah, I'm still trying to get used to this helmet. Damn it, they won't let me wear the helmet that I wore before. I guess it doesn't work like the NHL, where once they made helmets mandatory for all players, they said, those who haven't worn helmets throughout their careers, they're grandfathered in. So Rod Langway never wore a helmet here, played until the early 90s with the Capitals. Guy Lafleur, I remember, made a comeback with the Rangers in the late 80s after missing a few years, didn't wear a helmet. And when he came back, he didn't have all the flowing blonde locks that he had before. He was starting to be a balding guy, and that ultimately didn't work out that well for the Rangers. So you never know. Brian Windhorst covers the NBA for ESPN, frequently on Pardon the Interruption, as he was last night, looking at the Indiana Pacers heading into Game 3 at home tonight with the old must-win. Is it a must-win? You know, you can debate that. But he points out something very interesting about Indiana's star player. And this was how the conversation went last night with Tony and Mike on PTI.
Tyrese Halliburton did Tyrese Halliburton things in Game 1, but not in Game 2. Do you see that as an off night or as a product of how he was specifically defended?
It's been an off 2 years for him against the Thunder. If you go back and look, Tony, at the last 2 years, that's 6 games. Two games last year, 2 games in the regular season this year, 2 games in this series. Halliburton can't get it done against him. He really has difficulty getting into the lane, getting in transition. You can tell in his shots, he only averages 11 shots. Those 6 games, that's a pretty big sample size. Just 11 shots. He can't get into his normal rhythm. And the other thing is, he is being bothered by some sort of minor lower leg thing. You know, he doesn't want to talk about it. Rick Carlisle said he's in some discomfort. Maybe it's inhibiting him 5-10%, but you just can't have that against the Thunder. The big thing for him is the number of shots. It's not like that for everybody, and I know that the Pacers have a democratic offense, but when he scores over 20 points, they're 7-1 in the playoffs. He also averages 11 assists in those games. So when he's getting shots, they're working. He's not getting the shots. It's because the Thunder is so good at keeping him out of the lane, and I don't see an antidote that's going to change that.
Let's go to antidote for a second. Rick Carlisle has been wizard-like throughout the regular season starting in January and through these playoffs, as you know, Brian, in terms of just giving his guys or maybe a guy on a night an advantage. Anything that you see or people talking about there that might unlock Halliburton necessarily against that OKC defense?
So the one thing the Pacers are so good at and Carlisle game plans so well is finding matchup advantages. They hunted the matchup advantages that they saw that they had against the Bucks. They destroyed the Cavs' smaller perimeter, getting Halliburton and their other perimeter players in good matchups. And you saw what they did to Jalen Brunson and Karl Towns. But there's no weak links on this Thunder defense. And that's not an insult to Carlisle or the Pacers. That's just because this is how the Thunder are built. And they have a hard time hunting those matchup problems. And not only that, they're playing a specific way against Pascal Siakam. They're just roughing him up. It has been their game plan all year long to rough up guys and let the chips fall where they may with the officials. The officials are allowing playoff contact. They're getting away with it, and it's slowing Siakam down too. Siakam can't get his shot numbers up. It's why beating the Thunder 4 out of 7 times, and now you're talking about beating him 3 more out of 5 is so difficult.
All right, well, we're all waiting for Game 3 in Indianapolis in the finals. There's so much stuff going on. Chatter, Brian, I know you're in the center of reporting and listening to this and being interested in it. The mutual interest that we believe exists between Jay Kidd and the Knicks, where is that now? Has it advanced? When do we expect those two to talk if we do?
Yeah, so I believe that Jason Kidd is the Knicks' focus. He's the guy that they want to make their next head coach. But obviously he's under contract with the Mavericks. And I would say, and you guys know this, when you have a player like Jason or a coach like Jason Kidd, you don't request permission to interview him. You're not bringing him in and asking him his philosophy when they're down 3 points or whatever. You're asking permission to hire him. So don't pay so much attention to the permission. What it will come down to is whether the Mavericks are willing to let Jason Kidd go. So as I see it, the ball's in the Mavericks court now. They are aware of the Knicks' interest, and they have one of 3 choices. Number one, they can just tell the Knicks, no, we're not interested in losing him. We're not interested in doing business with you. Good luck to you. They can make sure Jason Kidd doesn't want to go to New York, which the way to do that is typically with a new contract. They just gave him one last year, but a lot has changed on the Mavericks since he got that contract. Or they can trade him there. And we have seen 3 or 4 coaches get traded over the last couple of decades, including Jason Kidd back in 2014, got traded from the Bucks or from the Nets to the Bucks. And let me tell you, they didn't ask for permission on that one until it was already a done deal. They gave him 2 second-round picks. So that's what the Mavericks have to do. They have to work through this with Kidd, and they are the ones who are going to make the next move in this process.
All right, let me get you out of here on this. And we're talking about things not necessarily about the NBA Finals now, but more peripheral things. Are you hearing anything new regarding big names who may be on the move, specifically Giannis, specifically Kevin Durant, or anyone else?
Yeah, let's talk about Giannis right away. Okay. We are now in the beginning or the middle almost of June. Giannis Antetokounmpo is overseas. I believe he is in Brazil. He has not asked the Bucks for a trade. Right now, as far as I am aware, there are no plans for a meeting with the Bucs to ask for a trade. The Bucs are not intending on trading him. They want him to return. They want to put their team back together and try to make another run next year. So right now, Giannis is not going to be on the trade market. And I think we're headed for a draft situation where he is not a part of that. Will that stay the same? Let's check back. Let's see what the Bucs do with their roster. Let's see where Giannis is at in July and August. But I don't think you're going to see Giannis traded in the short-term future as far as I can see. Don't feel that way about Kevin Durant. The Suns are still doing business. They just introduced their new head coach, Jordan Knott, this afternoon. I expect them to move on to looking at the Kevin Durant trade market. The key thing with Durant is this. He has 1 year left on his contract, guys, which means if you are going to trade for him, he is probably going to want to sign an extension. And that means he's going to want to participate in the process. The Suns do not have to do that. They can trade him wherever, but it is more likely a team will give up more to get him if they think he's more than a rental. And to become more than a rental, he needs to be involved in the process. There's a handful of teams that I think have interest. The Knicks are one of them, but there's a handful of teams that I think will have interest, and we'll see how that plays out probably over the next couple of weeks.
That's Brian Windhorst last night on PTI. There is an update since the conversation they had about Jason Kidd. You heard what Windhorst said. Shams Charania, who is like the new Woj at ESPN, is reporting now the Knicks requested permission to speak with Jason Kidd and got a firm rejection from the Mavericks. But as you heard Windhorst say, it's not unprecedented for a coach to be traded in the NBA. And in fact, Jason Kidd was traded from the Bucks to the Nets. So, traded to New York, that could actually happen once again. That just because the Mavericks said, no, you can't speak to him, doesn't mean that they can't say, well, if you really are interested in hiring him, here's what we would like back in compensation. For Kidd, coaching the Knicks would be cool and everything. And, maybe he's still chafed about what happened in the Luka deal with the Mavericks, but he's getting Cooper Flagg. I guess that could work both ways, too. If you get Cooper Flagg, you're expected to quickly develop him into a superstar. So there's some pressure with that. On the other hand, he might be the next big thing in the NBA. And if you have that guy, then you're automatically in contention. And, if you can get, some performances out of Anthony Davis and he stays healthy and you see, Cooper Flagg become what everybody expects him to be, then you're probably better off being in Dallas. But playing Broadway is a pretty cool thing, if it's working out for you with the Knicks. Now, the ownership thing, Mark Cuban isn't the owner of the Mavericks anymore. I forget the name of the group, but they're invested in casinos, and there's speculation that the team will be moved to Vegas and Dallas will get an expansion team in its place. Who knows what happens there? But if you're going to work for James Dolan, you're going to work for somebody who goes through coaches very quickly, and it's not usually a great place for a coach to be. But, as they say, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, and if you are the coach that leads the Knicks to the championship, it's been 52 years. They won 2 of them, 70 and 73, haven't won since. I've been to the finals, I think only twice since then, might be twice since they made it in 73. And this year they got to the Eastern Finals for the first time in 25 years. So there's things on both sides. But for now, the Mavericks are saying to the Knicks, no, you can't talk to Jason Kidd. Doesn't mean if the Knicks come back and say, well, we'll give you X, Y, and Z, if we can work out a deal, it might change. But they're saying to him, now, if you just want to hire him away and pay whatever buyout there is, forget it. We're not going to do that. Coming up in the next hour, Dan Quinn on the Green Light Podcast with a couple of interesting things about where he saw the fan interest really ramp up last season. And also Chris Sims with his quarterback rankings and where he has Jaden Daniels. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Well, time is starting to run out for the Baltimore Orioles. They lost again last night. They are 14 games under 500. They are 8.5 games out of the wild card. They're a last-place team, and we're a month and a half away from the trade deadline. Who'd have thought? The surging Baltimore Orioles, a playoff team the last 2 years, are likely to be sellers at the trade deadline. That doesn't mean they're going to deal Gunnar Henderson or Adley Rutschman or anything like that. But reality is this season is just about kaput, and it's not even the middle of June. We're going to do Orioles preview coming up at 11:30, or 10:30, I should say. Andrew Kittredge will join us. He's a right-handed pitcher, signed with them, was injured, has pitched a few innings for them, 6 innings, and has pitched pretty well. He's 35 years old. That's a guy I would think that they might be looking to deal. He signed a 1-year, $10 million contract, so whatever would be left for the last couple of months of the season, prorated on that, I think a team would be willing to pay that, given that they don't have any obligation to him after this season. So I'll ask him about that. I don't think that's something he's necessarily going to want to talk about, but the reality is that's where things are with the Orioles. But Orioles preview coming up at 10:30. The Commanders continue their mini camp today. We talked about Terry McLaurin being a no-show. But this is hardly, even though it's mandatory and the punishment is, oh, no, you shouldn't have done that, it's a $105,000 fine. I mean, it's nothing compared to the numbers they're talking about in a contract. And he signed a $70 million deal 4 years ago. The contract that was signed that would be a comp for him, that one you could look at and say, okay, I think he's probably in that range. It's DK Metcalf with the Pittsburgh Steelers signing a 4-year, $132 million deal. So it's a 4-year deal like McLaurin signed 3 years ago, except that it's $62 million more. It's nearly double to what he got. So that's the reality of where they are. Dan Quinn, not only doing the news conference yesterday, but I found some of the things that he said in a podcast appearance with Howie Long's son. Chris Long played in the NFL for a long time, won a couple of Super Bowls, one with New England and one with Philadelphia. He does the Green Light podcast, and he had Dan Quinn on as a guest. And you've heard Quinn maybe say some of these things, but this was a look back at last season where he was very careful about things that he said about the fan base. But reality was, most of the home games that he coached were stands filled with at least half, maybe more, fans for the other team. Now, I was at the Bears game, which was relatively early in the season. It was in October, and I felt like there were a lot of people in burgundy and gold there. But there were a lot of Bears fans there. Clearly there were. The year before, I went to a Dolphin game with my brother-in-law. The place was 75% Aqua. That was before Quinn got there. But as the season went on and they started winning and the excitement over Jaden Daniels built, you could see and feel the momentum of the fan base changing. And this was Quinn on when he felt it started to swing in his favor.
The last game we played the Falcons on a Sunday night. And although losing at halftime, running in, feeling a stadium's energy, and then to win in overtime, that was the one to make it feel like I remember how important the fan base is to this organization and vice versa. So it was in that night all the way towards the end. There was a couple of moments that were good, but there'd always been a couple of games like, damn, this is damn near 50%, Mm-hmm. But it was in that moment that I was like, this is cool, man. This is the fan base that I knew was here. And so that was a really cool night.
Yeah, you've coached in places where they get it loud.
Yep.
Seattle, Atlanta, not to mention Dallas when it's rocking. I'm sure I'm forgetting one or two, but this place feels like it can be a different kind of rowdy.
Yeah, and in DC it's cool, man. Living around here, it never gets old seeing the monuments in the Capitol and that. And then on those times in that game to feel like the importance of this franchise again in the NFL, it meant something to me. I still remember leaving Dallas and Jerry Jones saying how important, the organization was to the NFL. And that spoke to me from all the way back into the 30s to one of the old heavy hitters in the NFL as the Redskins and now Commanders. And that carried weight with me, knowing that this has been one of the crown jewels. And it's been cool reaching back out to a lot of conversation with Coach Gibbs and some of the old players that were here.
Wow.
Doug Williams is here. And so it's cool, man. To know where you want to go, you also need to know, where you've been a little bit. And so
no question. I see the Darryl Green. I see the Doug Williams on the wall back there. That's awesome.
Yeah, like those two are like absolute heavy hitters, man, in our game. Yeah. And I wanted to get to know them and what made them different.
That's awesome. Well, you look no further than the schedule. When the schedule comes out and I see 5 primetime games, that to me says, well, you guys got to go out and replicate it and earn it, obviously.
Yep.
It's a new era.
Yeah.
When it comes to the expectations placed upon your team on a national stage, I mean, that to me says the world wants to see y'all play football. How do you get your team prepared to be the hunted, right, compared to what you were last year, which is, hey, we're going to surprise some people?
Yeah, and I think it's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
After from you playing and from me coaching, you've had times when you were and times when you're not. And so you want to be in that space, man. That's like the type of team and energy that we damn sure want. We want to take the approach of the hunters. As you said, like, we haven't won anything, bro. So, we had a good season, postseason, 1-2, lost 1. So we got a lot to prove and a lot to, see where we can level up on. Good news. It's a really cool crew here, Chris, of players. Yeah. The locker room, the players, the standards, our guys, like all the way down, through the special teams crew of like, we covered more kickoffs than anybody. That was also part of our identity, man. Like, we're going to run, we're going to hit, we're going to be about it. And so it was cool to see that begin to come to life. We feel like we got a long way to go in terms of that, but like, we like the steps we're taking.
Is it a lot less stressful? I mean, football's stressful no matter what sometimes, but it's a lot less stressful when you enter an offseason and say, hey, we have our guy.
Yes.
Right? The kid's amazing. I know, there's going to be he's got to do it again and that sort of thing, but you can see it right off the bat. Does that help you just, hey, we're going to go hit this position need. We're going to get depth at this premium position. We don't have to worry about the biggest thing.
Yeah. And it was evident, man. He's got a really cool blend of confidence and humility. So he can vibe with the teammates in the same way, but like, he is a stone cold, like, get after a killer in terms of the preparation and what to do and how to go after it. And so, yeah, to help surround him, with other players and adding some pieces to that, that's a big deal. Firsthand what that's like when you got the right guy, behind center and all that can mean. And we for damn sure do. No flinch in this guy. Like, he's a real dude, Chris.
Yeah, and Zach Ertz said he might be the fastest player on the field sometimes. That was something that blew me away. I was like, wow, the stride on this guy and all those got to have it situations. When you talk about like the end of the Bucs game in the playoffs, comes down to I think you were in the high red and he pulls one and it's a nightmare. I say this all the time. I'd hate to be playing left end against that guy.
Because the play that went in the huddle and the play that gets resulted, they ain't always the same thing. And, like, good play. And it's cool to see what can happen. And that's part of the evolution for him, too. Early on, it was pull it down just to run.
Right.
And then it really evolved to remaining a passer. There's explosives that come that way, too. Then they want to stay back, go and attack. And so it was good to see, like, early on, got out of the pocket to run. Then it turned into got out of the pocket to extend and more explosives that could come. So a little bit of both with him, but yeah, he puts it in, man.
How did you, in conjunction with the GM and the owner, know he was the guy? And then when was it confirmed that you were right? Like, was there a moment, whether it was in, mini camp or camp or during the season where you were like, yep, we got him?
Adam knew, the GM, Adam knew before, certainly before any of us. And he knew it right away, man. He was the first player we evaluated together. And so as we were going through an LSU game, he said, hold on, let me show you something. And went back to like him at ASU against Oregon as a true freshman. And he was definitely the number one player on our board for a reason. But it was definitely Adam, man. Like, he was the one. He knew it. It was a cool concept to go through and evaluate all the other quarterbacks. We went out to LA, we went to Michigan, we were down in North Carolina, down to Baton Rouge. You're there for a few days. And so I had never gone through that, during my time in Atlanta. Matt was there the whole time. And Dak, obviously in Dallas, I was coaching on defense, but Dak was there the whole time. So it was my first real experience of like the whole process all the way through. And after watching the tape and then being around him down in Baton Rouge and then here, it was pretty clear, like, this is a real.
That's Dan Quinn on the Green Light podcast with Chris Long the other day. A lot of the stuff that you've heard, it's interesting to hear it in a looking back perspective. That the season was unfolding very well for them on the field, but looking up in the stands, it got to be a little bit disheartening to see that many people rooting for the other team. A game against the Eagles, and the place is half green and all that. And he said it really turned in the Atlanta game, this Sunday night game, and coming off the field where they're losing. And he's getting the cheers from the fans because we've seen, at that point, so many comebacks during the season. I think there was a lot of belief that they were going to come back, which they did, and won the game in overtime. This is part 2, and it's about the hiring of Kliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator and what went into that.
Coaching against him, it was always challenging. There were tempo issues that you had to be ready for, personnel groups and splitting out into empty. The ability for the quarterback, whether it was just a quarterback draw. I can remember that with Kyler, and spreading everybody out and trying to game up the front to stop them. Right. Then the second play begins, and the quarterback out on the edge. But it's the ability to get back on the line, get going quickly. We run a lot of no huddle snaps, so I like being different in that way that no one else does it to that amount of times. So I think sometimes being on the front end of things that are different, that's a good thing.
Yeah, no question. Is there a consideration with your defense when you do go a lot of tempo to say, hey, guys, you got to be ready. Not all these possessions are going to go 10 minutes.
Yeah, and what we try to do is see if we can we roll a big crew, number one. And then offensively, even though we're no huddle, we're usually at our best if completions and runs, they're 55 and over. So if we're getting to that space, we may still be no huddle, but now it's a 10th play, an 11th play, a 12th play, in a drive. And if we're doing those, and we go for it on 4th as well, and some of that's due to Jaden, but also knowing like we want to keep the pedal down onto people. And so those are some ways I try to combat it. Chris, I think if you were so conservative and did no huddle, it would really, really tax your defense.
Right.
You better have some boldness to go on 4ths. You better have some boldness to make sure you can stay in the fight so the defense isn't on the field the whole time.
And remember, Dan Quinn is a defensive guy. That's where he cut his teeth. He was defensive coordinator on the Seahawks Super Bowl championship team, defensive coordinator in Dallas last couple of years, head coach with the Falcons, but primarily a defensive guy. And he's running no huddle. But what he's telling you there is we're pretty much split down the middle between run and pass, and we want to keep the chains moving. We want to keep the clock moving, and we go for it on 4th down. So we're keeping our defense off the field. So it's not quite, because a lot of times when you have these offenses where you're scoring quickly or you're going 3 and out, you're putting a very tired defense back on the field, and he understands that. So part of the going for it on 4th down and making it, which is really key, but a lot of it is to keep the defense off the field. And you don't really think of it in those terms. When you run a no huddle, it's usually, to score quickly, to get things moving, to keep the pace up, to make the other team's defense tired, which it does, but you don't want the defense to come off the field for just a couple of minutes and then have to run back on. This last part, it's about Mikey Sainristil and the decision to draft him in the 2nd round out of Michigan and how they came to that decision.
He, in this season, played both inside and outside. And you've seen that some with some older guys. It might change year 2. We're going to play him a nickel. When we selected him out of Michigan, I'll tell you a quick story about Adam. Like, I remember leaving Michigan and telling Adam, like, we were there to work out McCarthy and saying, just like, man, I really want to coach Sainristil. And I said, he was running routes on like pro day at receiver, like legit, because he played and started at receiver there early. So I saw all these ball skills, like, all right, I see where this could go. And so then during the draft room, I'm like, all right, here's my guys. Like, hey, bro, like, don't say you're like, we don't want anybody to know how much you like him. When we got him, I thought he was going to we play him inside only. And I knew how competitive he was. Then eventually we moved him outside too. And he just said, man, let's put the 2 best guys outside. And so it was a good lesson as you're talking about like competitors. sometimes it doesn't matter always on what length or what size, even though you have parameters. There's some guys that just are ready to do their thing. And Mike Sainristil was one of those. But I love the fact that he can play 2 spots. That, to me, adds the versatility. It allows you to sign a Jonathan Jones, who's played different spots, because now –
I know John.
Yeah, I was old teammate too. And so I like guys that, hey, man, I want to match up here. We can do it. You want to put me outside? Like, we're good with that too.
That's Dan Quinn on the Green Light podcast with Chris Long. Another Chris, also son of a former NFL player, Hall of Fame player. Well, not quite Hall of Fame. Yeah, I wouldn't put him. Chris Long is a son of a Hall of Fame player. I don't think Phil Simms will ever get in, but he had one of the great Super Bowl performances ever, like 21 of 23 in a win over the Denver Broncos. Back he was on 2 Super Bowl teams, but was hurt for the second one, which they beat the Buffalo Bills with Jeff Hostetler. Anyway, Chris Simms has become quite a media star himself. His dad's still doing some TV, though he's not. I guess he's not with NBC anymore. But I guess he was CBS. That's right. He was part of the CBS team. Not with them anymore. Chris Simms is part of NBC, and he also does a lot of podcast stuff, and he looks at a lot of tape on quarterbacks. And this is the time of year, the dead part, where you come up with lists. So he's now putting together his list of the top quarterbacks. He has not gotten to the top 4, but here are 10 through 5. Excuse me. Number 10, Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl winning quarterback, just at 10. How about that? Baker Mayfield. He got Baker Mayfield ahead of Jalen Hurts at number 9. He's got Justin Herbert of Los Angeles Chargers at number 8. C.J. Stroud of Houston at number 7. A veteran quarterback who has won a Super Bowl at number 6 in Matt Stafford. And guess who Chris Simms has at number 5?
Jaden Daniels. Can you believe I'm saying that? It's 1 year in the NFL, the top 5 quarterback in the game. But first off, that's why we're calling this tier what we're calling it, the surgicality tier, because it's 3 guys in a row where I'd go, they just don't miss throws. That's the one thing, going back and watching them again this weekend, where you just go, holy crap. Can anybody, your defense can't get off the field against these guys unless you do something remarkable, right? And even in remarkable, Stafford, Stroud, they always hit a guy, it's covered, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this guy's got one other angle. Oh, wait, nobody's open, bad pass protection. Oh, that's right, I run 4-4. I can run around the edge and run for 70 yards up the sidelines. But yes, these are 3 quarterbacks that are incredible in the pocket. It's just one great decision after another. I can't get over all the great decisions from Jaden Daniels. He played the game like he was a fifth-year veteran this year. That's what you go through the year and you watch good games and bad games. You go, man, the bad games they're kind of good. They're still not bad. He did all the right things. He made all the right reads. He made no mistakes. Let alone there was a lot of plays, even in the bad games, where you go, well, nothing's there, and they still make something happen because of his ability to run. His size, we worried about his skinny nature, right? Okay, I still worry about that a little bit. But also, because he's so damn long and tall, man, he throws under pressure and over the line of scrimmage more than I even thought, thinking back about last year. That pops out a lot. But, man, just to know where to go with the football, never miss the target, never chase pipe dreams, right? As we talked about another rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams where he wanted more. I want sexy. I want a bigger play, blah, blah, blah. Jaden Daniels is just like, hey, 5 yards, boom, I'll hit it. I'll bore you to death. I'll just a bunch of little tiny cuts because I'm the surgeon until this thing just opens up. And then all of a sudden it's like, watch out, here I come. But incredible that way. And he's got great touch. If there's negatives about his game, here would be the negatives a little bit. Yes, maybe the skinniness of the frame. He doesn't throw off platform a whole lot, right? He could throw off his back foot and do all of that, but you're not, your mental image of Jaden Daniels isn't sidearm, like do stuff like that, right? That's another area I think he can improve on a little bit. And I'll say this too. I think he could work on getting his arm just a hair stronger. There's a few throws during the year where I'd go, no, CJ Stroud or Matt Stafford, they'd have fit that ball into that window right there, right? He has got a great very simple motion. But do I think he could make a few tweaks to maybe get a few more miles per hour like Joe Burrow did out of LSU to go to Cincinnati, like the long conversation I had with him? Yeah, I do. And I think it would serve him well, especially up here in the Northeast. Those are some of the negatives, but as you could tell, it's nitpicky. There's not a lot to talk about badly with Jaden Daniels.
So Chris Sims has Daniels at number 5. And what he said about the short throws, that he always looks down, that's what he's great at, is the check downs. He knows what to expect from the defense, and he's not going to get greedy. He's going to take what's there. That's what they said about Tom Brady. That's why you don't think of Tom Brady in the same way that you think of Brett Favre, and he was, of course, a better quarterback, but Favre was the gunslinger, and it cost him a lot of interceptions. Brady, he just surgically take you down the field and win the game, but at the end, certainly wasn't about running. He wasn't fast. But also, there wasn't anything really spectacular, and he never really had great receivers except for the year he had Randy Moss. So, it's early to make that comparison, and he's still 7 Super Bowls short of Tom Brady. But that's an important part of quarterbacking, is take what's there. Don't get carried away. Don't get sucked in and throw a crushing interception. And he only threw 9 of them all year last year. This is the last part of the analysis of Jaden Daniels. Chris Sims has him number 5 overall in the NFL, ahead of Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, and Matt Stafford. What he likes about him is his incredible consistency.
He, like C.J. Stroud and a Joe Burrow, have the ability, if they, like we've talked about with Trevor Lawrence, where I'd go, we could watch 10 out routes and he'll throw the out route 7 different ways, right? Mm-hmm. You could watch Joe Burrow, C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels throw 10 out routes and they will look exactly the same, 10 in a row. And that's why they're machines. And that's what's special about him. And that's why he never misses the target, or it's never like, he didn't make the throw. He always makes it, right? My only thing is, let's see if we can maybe dig back and find a way to get a few more RPMs on the ball. But again, it's nitpicky for a guy right here. And maybe he doesn't need to. Maybe it's just a comfort thing to where now he's comfortable in year 2 and he just lets it fly a little bit more, right? But that would be the only thing. There's just certain games you'd go, he could have fit that in there. Or, if he just pushed the ball a little bit harder here, that ball wouldn't have got knocked down going down the middle. But that's, again, like I said, very nitpicky with a special talent.
That's Chris Sims gushing about Jaden Daniels. He's got him as the 5th best quarterback in the league after only 1 year. One more football thing here. We got Orioles preview coming up. This is about Lincoln Riley and this story, which is just mind-blowing. Lincoln Riley with USC, where they've not done so well, and with Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner. He had him for 2 years at USC and won at Oklahoma, then won a national championship and had an absolutely terrible defense when Caleb was there. He is the highest paid school employee at USC. These are records from 2023. Made $11.5 million. His buyout is $90 million. So if you want to get rid of him, it's going to cost $90 million to get him out of there. He also got, according to these records, which are public because USC is a tax-exempt nonprofit institution, he got a $3.4 million housing loan. Guy's making $11.5 million a year. He got a loan to buy a house. Not a mortgage, but a loan. And is the only university employee who's yet to pay back even $1 of that. As of today, the national average interest rate is 6.9%. And he apparently got this interest-free, this $3.4 million loan, hasn't paid back a dime, which apparently is going around the athletics department. Athletic director Jennifer Cohen received a $3.8 million housing loan. She was hired in August of 2023. She's paid back $63,000. $63,000. You know how long it's going to take you to pay off $3.8 million at $63,000 over a 2-year period? Because she got this in 2023. Wow. The average cost of a home isn't cheap. It's $875,000. But on top of his contract for $11.5 million a year and whatever he makes in endorsements and anything else he does, Lincoln Riley got a $3.8 million housing loan, which he hasn't paid back a dime of. And for years we heard, oh, no, once we start paying the players, we're going to go out of business. We can't afford it. Well, I guess they can. And they now have a deal in place that's been approved by the judge where there will apparently be a salary cap of $20.5 million a year to pay the players' salaries. And those coaches who said, once they start paying the players, I'm out. No, they're not. No, they're not. Orioles preview is coming up next. We'll talk to Andrew Kittredge, right-handed pitcher for them, as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.